Thank you for the introduction. I'm, as Jerome said, chair of the Pituitary Foundation and involved in ENDO-ERN since the beginning in 2017. What I would like to talk about is something about a European reference network, specifically ENDO-ERN. The patients involved in the European reference network, the ePAGs, what the ePAGs are doing with ENDO-ERN, and if they are happy, we have a nice survey done in 2023, so that's also interesting information. I also want to zoom in on the ePAG activities within ENDO-ERN, and also something new, the measuring of patient engagement within ENDO-ERN, and also something about being well prepared as a patient representative on the European stage. The European reference networks are launched in 2017, and there are 24 of them. And there are virtual networks with healthcare professionals, researchers, and patients working side by side. And that's something rather unique. They try to provide high quality, cost-effective healthcare for rare disease patients all across the European Union. Closer? Okay, sorry. Okay. It originated from the Cross-Border Health Directive in 2011. And one of the most outstanding things within ENDO-ERN is the advisory panels, the CPMS, making it possible that patients get a diagnosis by doctors talking to each other. The patient doesn't have to travel, but the information of the patient does. Also, ERNs have research initiatives doing guideline development and create patient information. Another thing they are doing are webinars and exchange programs. Exchange programs means that healthcare professionals from other hospitals can go to other ERN of ENDO-ERN hospitals to get some experience. And of course, for the patient, it's a very nice opportunity is that patients are involved, where patient organizations normally are struggling to find each other in Europe. ENDO-ERN provides a platform for patients to meet. Looking at the European Reference Network on Rare Endocrine Conditions, ENDO-ERN, we have 105 centers of expertise in 28 different countries. That means that we are covered the entire EU plus Norway. And it's ENDO-ERN's mission to reduce and abolish inequalities for patients with a rare endocrine condition throughout Europe by facilitating knowledge and sharing healthcare and research. It also is that ENDO-ERN is covering pediatric and adult patients all across life. There is cooperation on research, education, quality of care, guidelines, and the provision of information, and all of these functions also incorporate patients. And when looking at the governance structure of ENDO-ERN, there is an adult chair, a pediatric chair, and a patient representative in the steering committees, in the steering committee of ENDO-ERN, and we'll talk about that later. And ERN's motto is expert multidisciplinary care throughout life, from birth to senescence. I talked about the patient representatives, and we are normally named ePAGs, and that stands for European Patient Advocacy Group Advocates or Representatives. So ePAGs is much more easy to use. And Autres has made a nice definition of what an ePAG is. An ePAG are patient groups that bring together the rare disease patient advocates who are actively involved in the 24 European reference networks, working in partnership with clinicians and researchers. And then I've said each of the 24 networks focus on particular diseases and has its own ePAG. There is one ePAG, and that's Transparent Child, who don't have ePAGs, but the other 23 have ePAGs in their networks. And looking at ENDO-ERN, we now have 19 patient representatives from 9 different countries in Europe. ePAGs represent the interest and the needs of the patient community, and that's very important. As a patient representative, I'm not a patient representative for pituitary diseases or prolactinomas. I'm representing the entire endocrine patient population. And it's also important that we bring that view into ENDO-ERN. It's not only advocating for your own disease, it's advocating for all patients. Also, it's important to work on both a national and a European level in order to know what's going on within the patient populations. And it's also important to work in partnership with clinicians to support the development of clinical guidelines. As patient representatives, we are asked to give our opinion on the patient perspective of clinical guidelines. And the same applies for research, education, and being involved in awareness activities. One of the examples is, for instance, the International Hormone Day launched by the ESE. It's also important to know that the position of an ePAG, as it is for the clinicians, is a voluntary position and does not involve any financial compensation. We are happy to get reimbursed for our travel and hotel expenses. And it's also important that patients must be endorsed by the patient organization. So there must be a patient organization behind the patient. It is not meant that a very active parent or patient with the disease wants to advocate for his or her goal. You have to have the broader view as a patient representative. And after getting endorsement of your organization, you will be involved in the ERN working groups, entities, and work packages. When we look at ENDO-ERN, you see that ERN is represented in all countries, as said, and also Norway. So that's the 28th. The UK is out because of the Brexit, but it doesn't mean that patient representatives of this country are excluded. We have 2 patient representatives from the UK in our network. We do see that it's difficult to find patient representatives in certain countries, for instance, Eastern Europe, and that has to do with language difficulties and also the lacking infrastructure of patient organizations. Not every country has the same structure as we have in the Netherlands, as in France, for patient organizations. So that's something we're working on. And also we do have patient organizations from the southern parts of Europe. Still, language issues stay a problem for a lot of them. Looking at ENDO-ERN, France is well represented with 3 different patient representatives: Grandir, Vivre Santé Riodi, and the Wolfram Syndrome Patient Organization. When you want to learn more about patient representation and how to become a patient representative within ENDO-ERN, you can scan the QR code and you will come on the website of ENDO-ERN and you will find everything about the patient representation within ENDO-ERN. When looking at the structure of ENDO-ERN, we have main thematic groups, and that's disease orientated, so it's adrenal, thyroid, pituitary, growth. And also we have work packages, and work packages are going through the organization, affecting all the different MTGs. And normally patient representatives, clinicians, adults, and pediatric form together a steering committee. And I have the example here of pituitary, that's my field, and it's very international. There is a Dutch adult endocrinologist, and a Greek pediatric endocrinologist, then a patient representative from the Netherlands, and a patient representative from Italy. And together we try to give form and shape to the pituitary main thematic group within ENDO-ERN. We also have asked our group of patient representatives back in 2023 if they are certified with being a patient representative within ENDO-ERN. And it's nice to see when you have the number of patient representatives and relay them to the number of people living in the country. So we have 1 patient representative from Slovakia, and that gives an interesting percentage because there are not that many people living in Slovakia. But you see that France with 3 patient representatives is relatively low. So there could be more French patient involvement in ENDO-ERN. What we also see is that adrenal disorder seems to be a little bit overrepresented, and the very rare endocrine diseases are not always having enough people. And we see some of our patient representatives, for instance, MEN, who is doing all the work by herself, and well, they really need some support from other patient representatives from other countries. And another nice element is that being a patient representative within ENDO-ERN broadens your horizon a lot. It's much easier to work together. You know the people personally. You can share information. You can share your patient information. When you're making a survey, you have help for translations, for dissemination. So our world got much bigger since the beginning of ENDO-ERN. And also we have the possibility to exchange best practices, and you don't have to think everything by yourself, but you can share. And also from ENDO-ERN, we have created friendships across borders, and that's also very nice. When we look at ENDO-ERN, it started in 2017, and we started out with 6 ePAGs at the time, and still 5 of them are still connected to ENDO-ERN. And fortunately, we have seen new patient representatives coming into ENDO-ERN. And when asking them, are you satisfied and do you want to stay? Over 70% said, well, yes, I would like to do that. And the others didn't say no, but they have time issues because attending meetings, attending international congresses costs time. And when you're having also a day job or a care job for children, whatever, it could be difficult to join in. So you must be aware of that. One of the things we also have as opportunity as patient representatives is to be involved in scientific research. For most of the patient representatives, this is new. And looking at the figures in 2023, 60% of the ePAGs have co-authored or even authored a scientific publication. And for many of them, it was the first time in their life. 25% had 1, 12.5% 3, 50% 4, and even 12.5% had 6 publications as a co-author of an author. So that's, I think, from a patient perspective, very interesting. And almost 90% of the ePAGs wanted to be involved in more scientific publications in future. So that was a message we gave to the healthcare HCPs within ENDO-ERN during our General Assembly in 2023. And looking at these figures, I think it would be interesting to do the survey again in 2025. When we look at the patient activities, what are we doing? We are involved in the development of clinical guidelines. For myself, there were 2 guidelines that we have the opportunity to comment on the patient perspective. It's not easy because you get a document of 60, 70 pages and are expected to answer, to read it and to give your feedback within a few weeks. Patient journeys is also very important. That's one of the things that Journées also promoted. And I don't know if, yes, on the website of Journées, you can find information about patient journeys. They have made a nice informational leaflet about it. Within ENDO-ERN, we are working now on a number of patient journeys. And for patients, it's important to know what the disease is, what's expected to come, how to act. And I'm involved personally in one of craniofaryngiomas, and we are interviewing patients at the moment in Germany, the UK, and the Netherlands. And you see a lot of difference, but also a lot of comparable things that patients encounter. So I think as an instrument, a patient journey is very important, and that's why ENDO-ERN is also endorsing the patient journey. Another thing we have been that was relatively new for us is that we were possible to attend international conferences. I will come back to that later. Another important thing is the educational opportunities that ENDO-ERN offers, and that's in the form of webinars. And also, it's not only doctors talking about patients, but also patient representatives giving their perspective in webinars. There is a nice collection of the webinars available on the ENDO-ERN website by following this QR code. Involved in research projects, I've mentioned that. We are not only, in the early days, we were the subjects, and now we are giving our perspective within research consortia. And also that's very new for patient representatives, but it gives a unique opportunity to bring the unmet needs of patients into research projects. And most of the research we perform by ourselves is by means of surveys. I will come back to that later. Also, we as patient representatives play a role in the ENDO-ERN registry project, EUREP of Eureka. And that's also very important. There are a number of special modules for specific diseases. And we have been working on the patient-reported outcomes in those special modules, for myself, especially for the pituitary part. And another thing is, and that's relatively new, is that patient involvement needs to be measured, and we are using the notebook for that. International congresses, the first time we were able to attend congresses was since the beginning of ENDO-ERN. I think the first one for us was, I think, Barcelona. And it's very special that also as a patient representative, we have a place in the Congress and we are able to visit lectures. And from the beginning, we were more a spectator, and nowadays we are also participants. And there's the photo of last year in Stockholm. I was able to talk about a survey on medicine shortages, which we'll speak about it later. And also, when looking at the development the international societies went through within ESE, Jerome was one of the people who made it possible that there became a patient board. And patients now have the possibility to be involved in what's happening within ESE. And we have I think about 30 patient organizations connected to the ESE at this moment. And we are able to discuss between ESE and the other patient organizations. And we are focusing on educational initiatives, building patient advocacy and support across Europe, and also inequalities in access and care for medication across Europe. And that's my project. Currently, the board is chaired by the president-elect, Wiep Karelt, and co-chaired by 3 PAG members from the UK, Sweden, and the Netherlands, and that's myself. And one of the things we did within the ESE patient board was creating a survey on medicine shortages. And maybe you've seen something about it. We launched it during the ESE Congress in Stockholm. And there were 3 versions. One version of the National Societies of Endocrinology. That is almost, I think we have now 30 or 32 different responses already. Also with ENDO-ERN, we made a version for the EMA reference centers. And if there are people here from reference centers who didn't fill out the survey yet, on the right side of the slide, you will find a link to the survey. And recently we launched a patient version for patient representatives, not for the patients, to fill out their, what they know about medicine shortages in their country. So when you are a patient representative, you didn't fill out the survey, you may take the QR code on the left and fill out the survey. It's in English, by the way. What we like very much is doing research. The best thing is when you want to incorporate the patient's voice as an ePAG, you need to know what's happening within your patient organization and beyond. So what we did is creating surveys. We team up with clinicians, researchers, and PhD candidates to make surveys. And we try to find the patient organizations and the patients to fill out those surveys. It's great to learn more about how to use an instrument like a survey, because it's not easy. And it's very difficult, as said, to reach out to all the patient populations all over Europe. And on the right side is the first project I did with an ENDO-ERN, mapping the unmet needs of endocrine patients across Europe. But when you zoom in on the answers the patients give, and you see the bias of being in the Netherlands and knowing your way and the patient organizations, because the most of the replies come from the Netherlands. I have very good contacts with Germany, the UK, and Scandinavia, but then it's getting more silent. And the problem is we don't know all the patient representatives. We offer the translations of the survey. In this instance, I had 23 different languages in my survey, and still it was very difficult. We try to be as neutral as possible because you're dealing with a lot of different cultures. And one of the questions I remember is, what's keeping you awake at night? And in the north of Europe, that was translated as what's on your mind, but in the southern parts of Europe, it was perceived as sleeping problems. So it's very difficult to make a neutral question, and that's where it's important to work together and to make a survey as good as possible. And well, the problem is there aren't everywhere patient organizations. Sometimes we find some in Poland and Hungary, and then you see, well, we are very proud of the fact that we have 50 members. And in the western part of Europe, we have patient organizations with over 1,000 members. So it's difficult to find the patients, but it is important to incorporate their unmet needs. And as said, just a translation isn't enough. You need more than just a translation. You also need to have some feeling for the cultural aspects of the survey. And well, new surveys are coming up all the time. So learning new people and who can help me and I will help them would be great. But also when other organizations and other people within ENDO-ERN have a survey, I will have a look at the Dutch translation so that they can reach out to the Dutch patients as it should be. Another new thing is the measuring of patient involvement within ENDO-ERN. And just, I think last week, a report of the European Union was, of the European Commission was published, and that's about how the ERNs are doing, this is an evaluation. But it's not only the hospitals and the healthcare providers that are being evaluated, also the patient's voice. And there are a number of things mentioned about patient representation in the report. And it is very important that also the patient's voice will be evaluated in a good way. So Autres made also a number of criteria for ERNs to measure the involvement of patient representatives. And one of the things is, the questions are asked, is patient representation included in the governance network? In ENDO-ERN it is, because there is an adult chair, a pediatric chair, and a patient representative chair. Also, it's a question, is the patient's, yeah, I'm lost now, I can't read it, it's too small. Is the patient's opinion in it? And yeah, sorry, I can't read it. The patient support groups, but generally there are a few questions asked. Is the patient incorporated in the activities of the ERNs? And there is a tool made by Autres, and that is the notebook. And it's an example of my German colleague Petra Broekman, who is working for MCG4, the genetic endocrine tumor syndromes. And we have been asked to keep track of what we are doing for the ERN. So when we join the meeting, that will be an entry. When we made a survey to ascertain some certain things, that will also be in the notebook. And one of the things MCG4 is working on, the MEN, is a survey on asking MEN patients what they encounter in life, what problems they have, what unmet needs they have on a social and a medical scale. And one of the things she asked me is, I don't have any reply from France yet. So I have a lot of countries, but France is still empty. So if you know patients with MEN, there is a QR code that leads to this survey. So we're very happy to include some French patients. And the tool also provides a French translation of the survey. It's also important to be prepared as a patient representative. Just having your national background is very important, but it's also important to know about the European landscape. So there are a number of organizations, and I think Autres is one of the most important one, who provides patients with guidance and with educational opportunities. And Autres has created the Open Academy. And the Open Academy was for me, I did the first one in 2016, an eye-opener for the European stage. It was there that it was talked about the creation of ERNs in future. It was a year later that the ERNs were created. And those schools are giving online resources, but also face-to-face. And it's a great opportunity to also broaden your network, to learn about other patient organizations, other countries. So as a patient representative, you should, and you didn't heard of it, have a look. There is also another organization, EPAG, that is for medicine development, everything about clinical trials, the ethics around clinical trials, and how HTA works, how the regulatory EMA works. So that's I think a 2.0 compared to what Eurodis. Eurodis is giving a very broad introduction, which you partly read from general medicine development. And there are online tools and there are face-to-face trainings, also very interesting. And rather specialized is EUCAPA, that's for HTA-R. There is something changing in Europe as from 2025. Patients are being involved in HTA processes. And it starts with ATMPs and oncology, but in 2028 also the orphan products will be monitored on this way. And that means that patient involvement is important because now it's that every country is doing its own HTA process, but in future, 2 countries will take the lead. And then they are looking for patient representatives with a European view, not only a view from their own country, but who have knowledge of their entire European patient community. And I think that ePAGs from ERNs are those patients that would give advice in the HTA-R processes. That concludes my presentation.